The stars above Earth bent and twisted as something huge pushed through the fabric of space itself. Then, with a flash of light that could be seen from every continent, the Vanguard fleet appeared. 100 ships, each one larger than a mountain, hung in the darkness above the blue planet like metal gods waiting to pass judgment. Admiral Torek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. His gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones, and his 4 eyes scanned the primitive world below with something close to boredom. The Vanguard had conquered 72 species across 3,000 years. Not once had they failed. Not once had they even come close to losing. "Begin scanning," Torek ordered. His voice was deep and cold, like stones grinding together. The tactical officer worked quickly. Numbers and images flashed across giant screens. Cities made of concrete and glass. Vehicles that burned dead plants for fuel. Weapons that threw small pieces of metal. Communication systems that leaked signals into space like a child crying in the dark. "Pathetic," the tactical officer muttered. "They have not even reached their neighboring planets properly. A few small stations around their world. Nothing more." Torek nodded. He had seen this before. Young species, trapped on their birth worlds, dreaming of stars they would never reach. The Vanguard would give them purpose. They would serve as all conquered species served. "Send the message," Torek said. Standard terms. The transmission went out in every human language. It was simple and direct. "Surrender your world. Accept Vanguard rule. Your people will live as servants of the Galactic Concord. Resist, and you will be erased. You have one rotation of your planet to decide." Torek expected panic. He expected governments to crumble, leaders to beg, populations to turn on each other. It was always the same dot far below, in a bunker carved deep into the mountains of Korea. General Park Do-hyun watched the alien message play on a wall of screens. Around him sat the United Defense Council leaders from every major nation, their faces pale with fear. Do-hyun was 63 years old. His hair had turned silver long ago, and lines marked his face like a map of every battle he had survived. He had fought in 3 wars. He had buried friends, enemies, and too many young soldiers who deserved longer lives. Nothing had prepared him for this. And yet, somehow, he felt calm. "They are demanding our surrender," the American representative said, his voice shaking. "What options do we have?" Do-hyun looked at his aide, Captain Yoon Jeon. She was young, barely 30, but her eyes held a sharpness that reminded him of himself at that age. She gave him a small nod. "We have one option," Do-hyun said quietly. "Prometheus." Silence fell over the room. Everyone knew that name. For 50 years, in absolute secrecy, humanity had prepared for this moment. Not because they knew aliens would come, but because humans had always prepared for the worst. It was in their nature. When the first radio telescopes heard strange signals from deep space, when the first probes sent back images of structures on distant moons, the world's governments had begun planning. Prometheus was that plan. Hidden weapons, secret shelters, technology that officially did not exist. "If we activate Prometheus," the Chinese representative said slowly, "there is no going back. We will be at war with an enemy we do not understand." "We are already at war," Jeon spoke up. Her voice was steady. "They did not come to negotiate. They came to take. The only question is whether we fight or kneel." Do-hyun stood. His old knees ached, but his voice did not waver. "I have spent my entire life protecting people. My soldiers, my country, my family. I did not do this so we could become slaves to creatures from another star." He looked at each face around the table. Ukraine. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Some looked like they wanted to cry. All of them were human. "We may lose," Do-Yun admitted. We may all die, but we will die standing, not kneeling. And maybe, just maybe, we will show these invaders something they have never seen before. He pressed his hand to a scanner on the table. Red lights turned green across the bunker. Prometheus is active, a computer voice announced. All stations, prepare for contact. Across the planet, things began to move. In the oceans, submarines that had been sleeping for decades woke up and loaded weapons that no enemy had ever faced. In the deserts, hidden doors opened and machines crawled out. In the cities, evacuation orders went out through secret channels, and billions of people began moving to shelters that governments had sworn did not exist down above. Admiral Torek watched his sensors with growing confusion. The human cities were emptying. Heat signatures were vanishing underground, and strange energy readings were appearing across the planet, readings that made no sense for a species at this level of development. What is happening? He demanded. His tactical officer had no answer. Torek felt something he had not felt in centuries. A small cold seed in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Doubt. He pushed it away. They were the vanguard. They did not lose. These humans were nothing but animals with clever tools. In one rotation, they would kneel or burn. Below, in the bunker, General Do-Hyun finished sending orders to every hidden base on Earth. He sat back down and looked at Captain Ji-Yun. How long until their ground forces arrive? 6 hours, sir. Do-Hyun nodded. Then we wait. And when they come down, we teach them what humans do to invaders. Outside, the world held its breath. The stars watched in silence. And somewhere in the dark between worlds, the first chapter of a legend was about to begin. The Vanguard dropships fell from the sky like metal rain. Each one carried 500 soldiers, armed with weapons that could melt stone and shields that could stop any known projectile. Strike Commander Velik led the assault on Seoul, one of 12 cities targeted for immediate occupation. Velik was proud. In 200 years of service, he had never failed a mission. His troops were the finest in the fleet warriors who had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. These soft, pink creatures called humans would be no different. The dropship touched down in the center of the city. Velik was the first one out, his boots hitting the strange gray ground that humans used for their roads. His 4 eyes scanned the area. Nothing. The streets were empty. Buildings stood silent like the bones of dead giants. No screaming crowds. No primitive soldiers firing useless weapons. No government officials begging for mercy. Just wind blowing through hollow towers. Spread out, Velik ordered. Find the population centers. They must be hiding. His soldiers moved through the streets in perfect formation. Their scanners showed nothing. No life signs. No heat signatures. It was as if every human in the city had simply vanished. Commander, one of his soldiers called out. Movement ahead. Velik turned. A single figure was walking toward them from the far end of the street. A human female, dressed in a dark uniform. She walked slowly, without fear, her hands clasped behind her back. Velik raised his plasma rifle. Around him, 500 soldiers did the same. The woman stopped 50 meters away. She was not tall. Her hair was black and cut short. Her face showed no emotion at all. I am Colonel Han Soman, she announced. Her voice was calm and clear, carried to them by hidden speakers in the buildings. I speak for the United Earth Defense Force. Velik made a sound that was almost a laugh. You speak for slaves who do not know they are slaves yet. Where is your population? Where are your leaders? Safe, Soman said simply. Underground, where your weapons cannot reach them. Nothing is beyond our reach, Velik replied. We will dig them out like insects from the dirt. But first, you will tell me everything about your defenses. If you cooperate, Your death will be quick. Someone tilted her head slightly. You misunderstand the situation, Commander. I am not here to surrender. I am here to give you a choice. A choice? Velik stepped forward, amused by this tiny creature's bravery. What choice could you possibly offer? Leave now, Selman said. Return to your ships. Go back to wherever you came from. Never return to this system. If you do this, you will live. Silence hung in the air. Then Velik laughed, a harsh, clicking sound that echoed off the empty buildings. His soldiers joined him. The idea that these primitives could threaten a vanguard was the funniest thing they had heard in years. And if we refuse? Velik asked, still amused. Someone's expression did not change. Then none of you will leave this city alive. Velik stopped laughing. Something about the way she said, "It's so calm, so certain," made the doubt return. He crushed it immediately. Fear was for the weak. Kill her, he ordered. 500 plasma rifles fired at once. The air turned white with energy. The spot where Soman had stood exploded in light and heat. When the light faded, she was gone. No body, no blood, nothing. What? Velik began. The buildings around them flickered. The walls, the windows, the signs, everything shimmered and then changed. What had looked like empty towers were suddenly covered in weapons. Turrets, cannons, missile launchers. And on every rooftop, on every balcony, in every window, human soldiers appeared. Thousands of them. They had been there the entire time, hidden behind technology that bent light around them like water around a stone. The female was a projection, Velik's tactical officer said, his voice breaking with fear. A trick of light. She was never really there. Someone's voice came from everywhere at once, from every speaker in the city. Humans do not surrender, Commander. We adapt. We prepare. We wait. And when enemies come to our home, we show them why that was a mistake. Velik raised his weapon, but he already knew it was too late. The first volley came from above. Not energy weapons, something else. Small metal objects moving faster than his eyes could follow. They punched through Vanguard shields, like those shields were made of paper. Soldiers fell. Then the missiles came. Then the ground itself exploded as mines that had been buried for decades finally woke up. Velik tried to organize a retreat. He tried to call for support from the fleet. But all communications were jammed. His soldiers were dying around him. These warriors, who had never known defeat, were being cut down like grass. He saw a human soldier step out from behind cover. The human was wearing heavy armor, face hidden behind a black visor. The human raised a weapon and pointed it at Velik's chest. Wait, Velik gasped. I can give you information. I can. The human pulled the trigger. In orbit. Admiral Torek watched his screens with growing horror. The life signs of his ground forces were disappearing. Seoul, New York, London, Moscow, every city, every battalion, every soldier going dark. Get them out, he ordered. Send rescue ships. Sir, we cannot reach them. All communication is blocked. We do not even know what is happening down there. Torek gripped the arms of his command chair so hard that the metal bent under his fingers. 3,000 years. 72 species. And not once had the Vanguard lost a ground assault. Below, in the silent streets of Seoul, the battle was already over. It had lasted 4 minutes and 32 seconds. When the smoke cleared, there were no Vanguard survivors. Colonel Han Soman, the real one, walked among the fallen aliens with her soldiers. She looked up at the sky, where the enemy fleet still hung like a dark cloud. Phase 1 complete, she said into her communicator. They know we can fight. Now we show them we can win. Admiral Torek had not slept in 3 days. His fleet had pulled back from Earth orbit to a position behind the planet's moon. And still his ships were dying. First, It was the scout vessels. Small, fast ships sent to observe the planet from a safe distance. They stopped responding. No distress calls. No explosions. They simply went silent and drifted through space, dark and empty dot. Then the supply ships started disappearing. A cargo vessel would be there one moment, then gone the next. When Torek sent ships to investigate, they found only wreckage hull plates with strange holes punched through them, as if something had passed through the metal at impossible speed. "This cannot be happening," Torek muttered, staring at the tactical display. 19 ships lost in 3 days, to a species that had not even achieved proper space travel. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a message from the planet." Torek straightened in his chair. "Show me." The screen flickered to life. A human male appeared, old, with silver hair and tired eyes. Behind him, Torek could see what looked like a military command center, full of screens and officers. "I am General Park Do-Yun," the human said, "commander of Earth's defense forces. I believe we should talk." Torek felt anger rise in his chest. "Talk? You slaughtered my soldiers. 12 battalions, 6,000 warriors, and not one survived." The old human nodded slowly. "Yes, and we will continue to destroy your forces until you leave our system. But I am offering you another path. You dare to offer me terms? I have 100 ships. I could burn your world to ash." Do-Yun did not flinch. "You could try, but you would lose more ships. Many more. And even if you destroyed our cities, we have shelters deep underground that your weapons cannot reach. We can wait. We can rebuild. And we will never stop fighting." Torek leaned forward. "What do you want?" "Leave. Take your remaining ships and go. Tell your masters that Earth is not worth the cost. Do this, and we will let you live." The communication ended. Torek sat in silence for a long moment. His officers watched him, waiting. "Increase patrols," Torek finally said. "Double the guards on every ship. We will find out how they are doing this, and we will crush them." But deep inside, that cold seed of doubt had grown into something larger, something that felt almost like fear. On the moon's surface, Lieutenant Baek Junho led his team through the gray dust. 12 soldiers, dressed in suits that made them nearly invisible. They moved like ghosts, leaving no footprints, casting no shadows. Junho was 34 years old. He had grown up in a small fishing village, the son of a boat captain. He had joined the military to pay for university, never expecting to become one of humanity's first warriors in space. But here he was, hunting aliens on the moon like his grandfather had hunted fish in the sea. "Target ahead," Sergeant Choi Nayan whispered through the radio. She was their sniper cam, patient and deadly accurate. "Vanguard patrol. 8 soldiers." Junho looked through his visor zoom function. The aliens were walking in formation, their weapons held ready. They were searching for the humans who had been destroying their ships. They had no idea that those humans were watching them right now. "Take them quietly," Junho ordered. The team moved. They were faster than the aliens expected, more silent than should have been possible. The Vanguard soldiers never even had time to raise their weapons. 8 aliens fell in 8 seconds, killed by blades and silenced weapons designed to leave no trace. "Clear," Mayon reported. Junho checked his map. The enemy flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was 2 kilometers away. Command wanted prisoners. They wanted information about the Vanguard, about the Galactic Concord, about everything these aliens knew. "Move out," Junho said. "Remember, we need the Admiral alive. Everyone else is optional." They crossed the lunar surface like shadows. The Vanguard had sensors, but human technology had found ways around them. The suits absorbed heat, bent light, and scattered any signal that tried to find them. To the aliens, it was as if the humans did not exist at all. The flagship loomed ahead, a massive structure of dark metal and glowing lights. John Ho found an airlock on the lower section, damaged in some earlier battle and never properly repaired. Sloppy. The Vanguard had grown careless after 3,000 years of easy victories. "We going fast," John Ho said. "Mayan, you take position here. Cover our exit. Everyone else, follow me." They cut through the airlock door in seconds. Inside, the ship was warm and smelled strange like chemicals and something else, something organic. John Ho did not let it distract him. The team moved through corridors, taking down guards before they could raise alarms. The Vanguard weapons were powerful, but they were designed to fight enemies who stood in open battle. They had no answer for humans who came from the darkness, struck without warning, and vanished before anyone could respond. 20 minutes later, Junho stood outside the bridge. His team had already secured the corridors around it. Inside, Admiral Torek and his officers were completely unaware that death was at their door. "On my mark," Junho whispered. 3, 2, 1. The door exploded inward. Junho was the first through, his weapon already firing. The bridge officers fell. Only Torek remained, standing at the center of the room, his 4 eyes wide with shock. How did you?" Junho pointed his weapon at the Admiral's chest. "On your knees. Hands where I can see them." For a moment, Torek hesitated. His hand moved toward a weapon at his belt. Then he looked around at his dead officers, at the human soldiers surrounding him, at the impossibility of his situation, and slowly knelt. "You have made a terrible mistake," Torek said. "The Concord will send more fleets. Hundreds of ships. Thousands. You cannot fight them all." Junho smiled behind his visor. "Maybe, but we beat you. And we will beat them too. Humans are good at surviving." He activated his communicator. "Command, this is Junho. Target secured. The Eternal Dominion is ours." Outside, Captain Shin Yunji's voice came back clear and strong. "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Now let us send the rest of these invaders a message they will never forget." The remaining Vanguard ships ran. There was no other word for it. These warriors who had conquered the galaxy for 3,000 years turned their ships around and fled from a single planet like frightened animals running from fire. Captain Shin Yunji stood on the bridge of the captured Eternal Dominion and watched them go. She was 41 years old, with short black hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. Before the invasion, she had been a test pilot for experimental aircraft. Now she was commanding an alien warship. "Should we pursue them, Captain?" one of her officers asked. Unji shook her head. "No, let them run. Let them tell everyone what happened here." She turned to the communication console and opened a channel to the fleeing ships. Her message was simple. "This is Captain Shin Yunji of the United Earth Defense Force. Your admiral is our prisoner. Your ground forces have been eliminated. Your fleet has been defeated. We are letting you leave because we want you to deliver a message." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Tell your masters. Tell your Concord. Tell every species in this galaxy. Earth is not a world to be conquered. Humans are not a species to be enslaved. If you come to us in peace, we will welcome you. If you come to us in war, you will share the fate of the Vanguard." She ended the transmission. Of the 100 ships that had arrived at Earth, only 19 escaped. They limped through hyperspace for weeks, damaged and demoralized. When they finally reached Concord space, they brought with them stories that would change the galaxy forever. The Great Hall of the Concord was an ancient place. Thousands of species had stood before its crystal walls, pledging their loyalty to the galactic government. Today, it was filled with representatives from 100 worlds. All gathered to hear the testimony of the Vanguard survivors. A soldier named Keth was the first to speak. His gray skin had turned almost white, and his hands trembled as he described what had happened on Earth. "They were everywhere," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We could not see them. Our sensors could not find them. They came from the shadows like spirits. We killed them. I know we killed some of them, but they kept coming. More and more. Like the darkness itself was attacking us." Another survivor stepped forward. This one was an officer, his uniform torn and stained with blood that was not his own. "Their weapons are primitive," he admitted. "Just metal and fire and force. But they use them in ways we never expected. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like hunters. They are patient. They are silent. And they never, ever stop." The hall was silent. Species that had lived under Vanguard rule for centuries stared at the broken warriors before them. The Vanguard had seemed invincible. They had crushed rebellions without effort. They had destroyed entire civilizations. And now they had been beaten by creatures who had not even reached the stars. The Concord's High Speaker rose from her throne. She was an ancient being, a creature of light and crystal who had lived for 10,000 years. Her voice rang through the hall like music. "You are saying that a pre-contact species, without hyperspace travel, without energy shields, without any of the technologies we consider basic, defeated the Vanguard fleet?" The officer lowered his head. "Yes, High Speaker. They defeated us. They captured our flagship. They took Admiral Tarek prisoner." He hesitated. "And they let us go. They wanted us to come here. They wanted us to tell you." "Tell us what?" The officer looked up. In his 4 eyes, there was something the Concord had never seen in a Vanguard warrior before. Fear. That Earth is not to be touched, ever, by anyone. The hall erupted in whispers and shouts. Some species were afraid. Some were angry. Some were excited, seeing an opportunity to free themselves from Vanguard oppression. But all of them were thinking the same thing. If the Vanguard could fall, anything was possible. Far from the Concord's halls, in a trading station at the edge of known space, a man named Tai Wu sat at a bar and drank something that tasted almost like coffee. He was one of the first humans to leave Earth after the invasion, a trader, an explorer, and sometimes a spy. His ship, the Morning Calm, was nothing special. Just a small cargo hauler with more repairs than original parts. But when Tai Wu walked into a room, conversation stopped. When he sat at a bar, the seats beside him emptied. Everyone in the galaxy knew what humans had done to the Vanguard. A merchant, a small, insect-like creature with too many legs, approached him carefully. "You are human?" the merchant asked. Tai Wu nodded. "That is right. The stories they tell. Are they true? Did your people really destroy the Vanguard ground forces? Did you really capture their flagship?" Tai Wu took another sip of his drink. "What do you think?" The merchant's legs clicked nervously. I think I am glad that my people never tried to invade your world." Tai Wu smiled. Smart. He finished his drink and stood up. The crowd parted for him without being asked. As he walked back to his ship, he heard the whispers following him like shadows. "Human," they said. "That one is human?" It was strange, Tai Wu thought. A month ago, his species had been unknown. Now they were the most talked about creatures in the galaxy. The ones who had broken the unbreakable. The ones who had shown that even gods could bleed. He climbed into his ship and set course for the next station. There was work to do. Trade routes to establish. Relationships to build. Humanity was not just going to survive in this galaxy. They were going to thrive. Behind him, in the bar, the aliens continued to whisper. And with each whisper, the legend grew larger. 5 years had passed since the Vanguard came to Earth. 5 years since humanity had fought its first war against the stars and won. The world had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. General Park Da-eun sat in a small garden in Bizen, watching his grandchildren play among the flowers. He was 68 now, retired from military service, his body tired, but his mind still sharp. The garden was peaceful, a small piece of quiet in a world that had become very loud. His grandchildren were too young to remember the invasion. To them, the aliens were just part of life. They watched shows about space travel, played games where they pretended to be Earth's brave defenders, and never understood the fear that their grandfather still carried in his heart. The garden gate opened, and Admiral Yoon Ji-yeon walked in. She was no longer the young captain who had stood beside him in that bunker 5 years ago. Now she commanded Earth's first space fleet, the ships that humanity had built using captured alien technology. "Admiral," Da-eun said, not looking up from his grandchildren. "I thought you were supposed to be at the Concord embassy." Ji-yeon sat down beside him on the bench. "I was. The negotiations are going well. 47 species want trade agreements with us now. 15 want military alliances. And how many want us destroyed?" Ji-yeon was quiet for a moment. "A few, but they are afraid to try." Da-eun nodded slowly. This was the new reality. Humanity was no longer an unknown species on an isolated planet. They were players in a galactic game of power and politics. Some aliens wanted to be their friends. Others wanted to be their customers. And some wanted to make sure that humans never became too powerful. "What about the Vanguard?" Da-eun asked. Ji-yeon's face darkened. "Their empire has collapsed. When word spread that they lost to us, their subject species began to rebel. Worlds that had been conquered for centuries suddenly found the courage to fight back. The Vanguard tried to hold their territory together, but they were stretched too thin. Civil war broke out. Their homeworld fell 2 years ago." Da-eun closed his eyes. He thought about Admiral Tark, still a prisoner on Earth, locked in a cell that he would never leave. He thought about the 6,000 soldiers who had landed on Earth, that first-day warriors who had expected easy victory and found only death. "We did not just beat them," he said quietly. "We ended them. 3,000 years of conquest, and we destroyed it in 5. They would have done the same to us," Ji-yeon pointed out. "Yes, they would have." Da-eun opened his eyes and looked at his grandchildren, a boy and a girl, chasing each other through the flowers, laughing without a care in the world. "That is what frightens me." Ji-yeon frowned. "Sir, we won because we were desperate, because we had no choice. We did terrible things in those first days, things that I will never speak of. And we would do them again if we had to." He turned to look at her. "But now we are not desperate anymore. We are powerful. We have ships and weapons and technology that makes the Vanguard look primitive. And I wonder, what will we do with that power?" Ji-yeon understood what he was asking. It was the question that kept her awake at night, too. "We could become like them," she admitted. "We could build our own empire, conquer other worlds, take what we want because we are strong enough to take it." "Yes, we could." Da-eun watched his grandson pick a flower and give it to his sister. Such innocent little creatures. Such potential for good and for evil. "Make sure we never do, sir. That is my last order to you, Admiral. Not as your commander, but as an old man who has seen too much war. Whatever happens, whatever threats we face, whatever opportunities we have, make sure humanity never becomes what the Vanguard were. We are better than that. We have to be better than that." Ji-yeon stood and saluted. "I understand, sir. I will not forget." She left him alone in the garden with his grandchildren. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere up there, Beyond the clouds, human ships patrolled the solar system. Human ambassadors negotiated with alien governments. Human traders carried goods to distant stars, and in bars and markets and council halls across the galaxy, preachers of every shape and size still told stories about what had happened 5 years ago. The stories had grown in the telling, as stories always do. Some said that humans could not be killed. Some said they could turn invisible, walk through walls, read minds. Some said that Earth itself was alive, protecting its children with supernatural power. The truth was simpler and, in a way, more frightening. Humans were just another species, flesh and blood, born and dying, hoping and fearing like everyone else. But when pushed, when threatened, when given no choice but to fight or die, they became something else entirely. They became survivors. Taiwu, now captain of his own small trading fleet, heard the stories everywhere he went. He never corrected them. Let the galaxy believe that humans were monsters. It was better than the alternative, better than having to prove it again. Colonel Han Soman retired to a quiet life in the countryside, raising vegetables and trying not to think about the soldiers she had killed. Lieutenant Baek Junho became an instructor, training the next generation of warriors who might never have to fight. Captain Shin Yoonji commanded the Eternal Dominion until her death, turning the captured alien ship into a symbol of human strength. And General Park Doing spent his remaining years in that garden in Bizen, watching his grandchildren grow up in a world that was strange and dangerous and full of wonders he had never imagined. Sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the stars. He would think about all the species out there, watching humanity with fear or hope or hatred. He would remember the Vanguard fleet appearing in Earth's sky, so confident in their power, so certain of their victory. They had been wrong. And that simple fact had changed everything. The Vanguard went up against humans, and they were never seen again.